Reinventing the wheel is time-consuming and inefficient, so make sure to leverage the great CodeIgniter community and make use of the great open source project it has released. Now in this video we'll explore some popular libraries and projects that can get you up and running in no time. A good library is generic, well documented and well structured. Also it has little or no dependencies. Now if you're new to using libraries from other developers, start with widely used libraries that are recommended often by experienced CodeIgniter developers. There are a couple of resources to find libraries on GitHub, in Sparks and in Packages for Composer. So let's have a look at GitHub first. When you search GitHub for CodeIgniter, you will find a plethora of great libraries. Now this, for instance, is a library called IronAuth and it was created by Ben Edmonds. I'll post a link underneath this video. Now let's just have a look at a couple of signs to look for in a good library. Well, Ben has written quite a few CodeIgniter libraries and they are pretty good, so that's a big plus. First, let's have a look at the commits list. As you can see, the latest commit was done not very long ago, so it looks like it's being maintained. Now, of course, we want to know how well it is being maintained, and for that we'll have a look at the graphs. After you've clicked on graphs, you need to click on commit activity. Well, the number of commits have been getting lower, but it's been under active development for, well, at least a year now, so that's good. Let's go back to the code page and browse for documentation. Let's see, it's located here. Let's have a look at that. And wow, that looks pretty extensive. Okay, good. This looks like a library that could be worth using for our little project. Now another great resource to check out is Sparks, and you can get it at getsparks.org. And what's really cool about it is that it's a code repository especially designed for CodeIgniter projects. And let's have a look and see if IronAuth is also there. And it looks like it is, so we're in luck. You know what? Let's just bring this into our project. Now, first of all, you will have to install Sparks. Now, there is a great how-to guide on Sparks here, but I'll just walk you through it just for fun. Now, I am using the command line option, so I'll just click here and copy this bit of code right here. Now what I need to do is navigate to the root of my CodeIgniter application. So I'll just open up my terminal and navigate there, paste in the code and run it. Now you see it's pulling down the Sparks manager and installing that, and that worked just fine. Now as you can see, we have a new folder in our project called Tools, and that's where Spark lives. Also, it has created a myLoader library, which is right over here inside of my core folder. Now this class extends this CI loader class, and that is the class that CodeIgniter uses to load helpers, libraries and so on. And it adds some extra functionality to CodeIgniter's loader. And it should, because Sparks isn't built into CodeIgniter, so CI needs to be told where to find the Sparks we'll be installing later. So let's just have a look at how that works. As you can see, a constant called Spark path is defined here. While we're at it, let's alter this path so it will point to the proper folder, because we've moved everything down from the web root, remember? And here in the initialize function you can see that it does all kinds of things to the CI autoloader. Actually, it's just adding Sparks there. So let's just save that and we're ready to install a library. Back to the browser and let's look for IronAuth again. So to install IronAuth we need to copy this bit of code here, and what it does is it will talk to the Spark command and tell it to install the IronAuth library. So let's just run that in our terminal and make sure we're still in our project root. And there you go, the Spark was installed and we're on fire. So let's just have a look at what has happened. Apparently we have a new folder called Sparks, and it contains an IronAuth folder. Now inside of that folder we have all IronAuth files, and they are separated from the rest of our application, so no cluttered folders full of dependency based code, and that's great. Let's just quickly test that out. IronAuth uses session and a database, so let's set up those first. Now I've already created a database and we'll create two tables. And the first one will hold session data, and we'll get the proper SQL command from the CodeIgniter user guide. And it should be over here somewhere, just down at the bottom. Let's copy this and paste it in our SQL manager. Now, of course, you can use any other database tool or the command line to do this, whichever is more familiar to you. Now we need to go into the SQL folder in IronAuth and open up the SQL file. Copy that and also paste that into my SQL Manager. Now this will install the user table, the group table, and stuff like that. And let's just run all these queries. And as you can see, we have the necessary table set up here. And the users table already contains an administrator. Now finally, since we are using the session library, we must not forget to set up an encryption key. So let's go over to the config folder and open up our config file. Scroll down to the encryption key and just paste in some random gibberish. Now let's also do the same for the production folder, only now we'll use a different key. Save those files. And I think all we need to do now is set up our database credentials, which we'll do here for the development environment. My username is Joost van Veen. My password is tuts+, and the database is called best practices. And I don't want pconnect, so I'll just set that to false. And with that out of the way, we're finally ready to use IronAuth. I'll just create a new controller, and we'll just call that the user controller. So that will be user. That'll be a CI controller with a class name of user, and it will extend CI controller. Inside of that controller, I will create a public function called login, which will hold the login form. And for now, I'll just echo login form. Now, and just for fun, we'll open up the welcome controller and secure that. So what we're going to do is create a public function called construct. And inside of that function, we'll just load a Spark called iron_auth and then a slash and the version number. And all we need to do to secure this controller is write an if statement and say if this iron_auth logged in equals false, then we'll redirect to user login. Let's just save that and see if it works. I'll just fire up the website and we're getting an error here, and that's because I forgot to call the parent constructor. If you create your own constructor method inside of a controller, do not forget to run the parent constructor first. Also, I think I'll probably get an error on redirect because I haven't loaded the URL helper yet. So let's auto load some helpers here. Auto load the URL helper, and we'll also load the HTML helper, and we'll also load the form helper. But I'll tell you what, we could auto load the Spark, and we can do that exactly the same as we did before. So we'll just say IronAuth 2.3.2, and then we should be able to safely remove the Spark loading here. Try that one more time. And as you can see, we're being redirected to the user login form. So that looks like it's working. So let's see what we have here on IronAuth. And right beneath the form, we'll do a var dump of this IronAuth user row. And that should give us the details for the currently logged in user. And as you can see, that returns an empty array, which is good because we haven't got a logged in user. Just one more test to go, see if we can log in a user. We'll just go back to the welcome controller, and inside of the constructor we'll do this IronAuth login, and then we need to pass in the credentials for the default user that has been installed. And that's an email address of admin@admin.com and a password of, well, simply password. And if I move this up, then if all goes well, I would be logged in, so I would not be redirected. Let's try that out. Remove this, so we're back at our welcome controller. And as you can see, we are currently logged in. And now in our user login controller, we are dumping the details for this user. Now we will create the login form later on, but that's for a later video. But as you can see, it works perfectly, and it was a breeze to install. Now Sparks is cool. Can it get even better than Sparks? Yes, it can. Now Sparks is CodeIgniter specific, whereas there's also a tool that works with all kinds of generic libraries, and that tool is called Composer. You've probably heard of it. In the next video, I'll show you how to use it inside of CodeIgniter.